So today I have David Grant. Did I get your last name right?
Gary David.
I'm so sorry, Gary David. Let's try
No,
that
no
again.
problem.
Today we have Gary David. So Gary, let me know how you got into product management.
So it's actually a little interesting. So I got a job out of college with a small company that was based in the UK, and I was in their US office. So they had a head office in the UK, but they only had about five or six of us here in the US, and we were selling ad space on niche classifieds websites, and they gave me a website to sell on, and it was for people to list boats for sale, so buying and selling boats. And as I was calling prospective clients to list their boats with us and talking to users that were looking to find a boat, and also display advertisers I was trying to sell to, and then looking at the competition that's out there, I was starting to collect a lot of feedback on things that we should be changing on our website in order to make it perform better.
Hmm.
Because ultimately I wanted to get more sales, because I wanted to make more money. And then I started kind of sending all that feedback back to our people in the UK and in Germany at the time, who the main boats website was managed out of. So I started like chirping and kind of being loud, like, we need to change this, we need to change that, we need to do this and do that. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was essentially doing product management. Um, I didn't even know that that was a thing. And then as my role kind of expanded at that company, as we started to launch new websites, it was my job to kind of train up the new salespeople on those websites, but also to make sure that they were good enough to kind of go and be successful in the market. So kind of doing that research on, what is our competition offering on their website with their services, and how could we kind of better ours. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then from there, I got into a more formal role at another company. Still didn't know that I was doing product management, but that's how I kind of fell into this.
Yeah, it seems like, and I've seen this happen over the last 30 years, that everyone is assigned more and more narrow roles. And what gets missed is the connective tissue, if you will, and I guess my analogy is it's like work is an assembly line. And over time, everybody's been assigned narrower and narrower positions, where you're just going to worry about putting your piece. So if you imagine automobile assembly line where you got a conveyor belt, right? And it moves past and everybody puts on their piece. And everybody's been optimizing for local maxima, right? And in
Mhm.
fact, when I worked at EDS years ago, they were owned by General Motors, and they told us this story called over the wall engineering. And what happened was somebody noticed one day that there was a wooden mallet at the end of the assembly line where there should not be any wooden mallet, and it was well worn and well used. So this guy's like, "Hey, what's with the mallet?" And they're like, "Oh, that's what we pound the door shut with." And he's like, "Pound the door shut with? Seems kind of odd." And he's like, "So how long's that been going on?" "Oh, about 3 months." "Oh, okay. So it was fine before that?" "Oh, yeah." So what's with the mallet?" "Well, the doors were hard to shut, and they time us on how fast we install the door. So we told them there was a problem, but we figured we solved it. We got a hammer, we got this mallet, and we pounded it shut." And he's like thinking, how many mallets are we going to have to buy for all the salespeople? Because
Yeah.
every time they show this car, they're going to have to pound this door back shut with the mallet. So he looks upstream, 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 finally finds engineering has made a change 3 months ago. They're not aware of the downstream effect. So it seems like what's happened is everybody's been focused on local maxima, and PM is sort of like the person who's like, "Hey, what's with the mallet? Maybe we should be worried about it." "No, no, no, that's nobody's job." And so that seems like that's where PM has happened. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and definitely I can empathize with those people. With somebody makes a change somewhere, um, but doesn't necessarily communicate that downstream. And that's something that's helped me, that whole kind of, let's communicate to the organization on what's going on, especially on the sales side, because I came from a sales background, and I understand how important it is arming those people within your organization with like the best tools possible to do their job, because you're going to need them to sell your product. But yeah, I've been in situations before where I've walked into an organization and heard kind of almost horror stories where, oh yeah, they made a change to a couple of the features in the product. But when they did that, they never told us. And then all of a sudden, all of our customers started calling up and saying, what's going on? Or I'm in the middle of trying to close a deal or push something through. And I gave a guy a trial, like a trial demo of the product for a couple of days. And all of a sudden, things are different now from when I initially demoed it to him. So that communication thing is very key. And I think a lot of product people sometimes still miss it because they're kind of thinking in their own textbook product bubble. And they're like, well, I read it in a book, or I saw it in an online article or a course or something I took, and this is how it has to be. But it's never always going to be that way. It's not going to be as finite and as easy as the experts maybe say it is. So you have to kind of go with the flow and find out what works best in the environment you're in.
Yeah, it's missed communication or non-communication is invisible is the problem. You don't know when you haven't communicated something. And I find that my sales experience seems to be the most helpful thing for product management because really it's about selling. It's about making sure that you know what everybody's needs are. And people don't always express those needs really well. I find, for example, they'll ask for a feature, but they don't even know what the outcome is. My working analogy for this is like kids asking for a Christmas present and they don't even know why. They're like, I saw it on TV, and I can
Yeah.
remember even being a kid and seeing something advertised and thinking that's not going to be as much fun as it looks like it is. I didn't understand how ads work. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
look, they're having fun. You'll have fun. But I could look at it and go, I don't think that's going to be, it's like that scene from Big with Tom Hanks where they're like, "Oh, look, our new toy is a robot that changes into a
Yeah.
building." And he's
Yeah.
like, "I don't get it." And
It's
they're
a
all like, "It's
building.
fantastic." And he's like, "What's fun about a building?
Yeah.
What can you do with the building?" And they're all just oblivious to that. So I'm curious when you initially made those suggestions for the website, right? Because I've been in this position too. I've been in sales where I'm like, and unfortunately, I had 20 years of experience in usability at this point, and I'm like, "God, your website is horrible." I didn't say it that way, but I'm like, "These are quantifiable, objective problems with the website," right? Um, so when you push and I when I pushed back, they were like, "You've been here 6 months," and the CEO was kind of his mindset was I'm right. And so if somebody convinced him in the right way to change the website, he'd spend 100 grand to do it. But if some sales guy said, I can't sell
Mhm.
because your website's turning customers away. When you first made suggestions um, to improve the website, did you get much pushback?
Um, what I got a lot of the time was, wow, that's a good idea. And then no action was taken.
Okay.
S-
Okay.
so there was some pushback when it came to the more and I didn't understand a lot about, I mean, I grew up with computers and I knew certain things. I knew that some stuff should be easy to change and some stuff would be more difficult. The stuff that was easy to change, like for instance, and I didn't, this was very early on, I noticed at the bottom of our website where it said like, all the top boat website in the world. It had some sort of text on there, and then had a list of all the countries we serve. It didn't even have the United States written down there, and they want. And from like an SEO standpoint, it's like that's kind of needed. And, I would tell the people that, and they'd go, oh yeah, you're right. And then they wouldn't make a change. And I was like, that's literally a 5-minute change, of just going in and adding that. Um, and I never got pushback on those things, but I did get pushback when it came to, we need to be able to set up a feed in order to integrate with this content management system that this one boat dealer I talked to is loading their boats into. And this guy's got 3,000 boat listings, and he said he'll definitely sign on and come on board with us, but he wants a feed set up automatically. And we were offering web scraping, but he was like, I don't want that. That's not accurate enough. I want an actual feed. And I would get pushback. I got pushback from that, I remember, just because it didn't align with um, kind of the goals on what they were doing overall in with the product in Europe. But that was important to us here in the United States. And I think the organization they were not looking at it from a standpoint of our group director has come in and said, the United States is a big market for us. We want to expand and we want to grow into it. I don't think that was effectively communicated to some of these people. So they just took the view of, we're going to keep doing things how we do them and what works well in, Germany and England and Spain. And if the United States needs this, then they're just going to have to wait. So there was kind of like a miscommunication there of what's the goal of the company? Like, how important is this US office? Because we're told here that this is going to be the new kind of flagship of the company. But then the people that are in the middle management making the decisions back in Europe definitely didn't get that memo. So they weren't really jumping whenever we needed anything done.
Yeah, it sounds like, I forget who it was that said, when people show you who they are or what they care about, listen the first
Hmm.
time. And it seems like asking for that feature that you knew was easy. I'm sure they were like, words on a website. My goodness, that's the work we have to go through to put a word on a website. Now, that might be true, right? It might be true in the sense that they're like, oh, we use this old CMS and nobody knows how to use it. We're afraid to touch it, right? It's brittle. But it seems like that's kind of your litmus test, or if your brown M&M test, if you're familiar with that, that
Hmm.
story. Um, Readers can look it up sometime. It's an interesting story from, I think, Bon Jovi, where they would ask for brown M&Ms in a bowl, to make sure that people had read the contract. Because
Yeah.
if they didn't see the brown M&Ms, they knew that somebody had left that out. What else had they left out? And they had real rigorous requirements for their road shows that people weren't expecting, and they could ruin the venue if they weren't followed, which
Hmm.
happened. So it seems like, and this is a working thing I've got as well, that once you saw that they wouldn't even change the word on the website, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's a great idea," which could be just, placating you, right? Uh, Once you saw that they weren't going to change that, did you at any point realize, these people just aren't going to make any changes? Doesn't matter how easy or important it is.
Yeah, that kind of became apparent after after a while. And then even to kind of make matters, I guess you could say, worse, was they did make a big change, and they did this actually multiple times to our office. They changed the platforms that the websites we were selling off of. And they never communicated that to us. So we showed up one morning and everything was different with our horse's website. And our phone was just ringing off the hook like mad. And we couldn't help anybody because we didn't know what was going on. And then the communication we got back was, oh, we moved all of our classifieds to this one platform. It's been a big project. We've been working on it. It's going to be great, but it's like, you never communicated this to us. And then the same thing happened with the boats website I was working on. And when they did that, I had 3 or 4 display customers that were paying, quite a lot of money for their display advertising to be displayed on the website. And when they did that, they never put those customers back up. They took them down and they just serviced their
Wow.
European-based customers, and they completely forgot that I had customers on there, and I was calling them and it kind of fell by the wayside. But luckily, about 6 months after that, there was a change at the top, and some new people came in and really understood that like the old way that they were doing things is not going to continue to work. And they need to do a much better job of kind of managing uh, managing the technology and managing the communication and just kind of managing the whole business.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and we might grant them the benefit of the doubt here at first blush and say, because there are several possible reasons it seems like that could happen. One is monetarily, the US is not important to them. And they're like, oh, by making this change to this new platform, the 90% of our business that makes us money went up 10%. And the US, yeah, went down 10%. But you guys really aren't important to us. In which case, it's like, wait a minute, their stated strategy is not the same as their real strategy.
Yeah.
But the other possibility is the people at the top just don't know what they're doing. Like, and I saw this. So maybe the CEO got sold some bill of goods. Oh yeah, this new CRM is gonna meet this need, and nobody talks about data driven decisions. And I'm a little suspect of that because you have to be careful of what the data is. Truth driven decisions, I agree with. Data can be, my old joke from consulting was if it's on the computer, it must be true, right? And so if it's data, it must be true. So, but it might be that the upper management's making decisions without actually looking at the data and saying, well, how's this actually objectively going to impact our business? We've stated the US is growing 5 times faster than the rest of the business, and yet this is going to screw over the US. We haven't even talked to them. The fact that they didn't talk to you means to me, they certainly didn't care. Now, why didn't they care is the question, you know?
Yeah, and it was it, they did at first. It was the U.S. is we need to learn everything we can about the U.S. market, and then we would be like, well, we're telling you guys all this
Bam, bam,
feedback,
bam, bam. Yeah.
and like they were based in the UK, so they would put verbiage on the website with UK spellings, and they would just the grammar was
Yeah.
British
Yeah.
speak, and it's
Very posh.
the people are going to look at this in the US and be like, why does the word color have a U in it, and be like, what's going on with this website? I don't know if I want to do business with these people. This was about 12 years ago, and a lot of people were falling for all those Nigerian prince scam emails,
Oh God. Yeah.
and all that stuff was written in British English, and people would get like email from us saying like, place your ad with us, and it was written almost in that same kind of verbiage, and people were
Filter.
just very
Yeah.
confused, and we were trying to tell them all this, and it was like slowly getting through, but it wasn't enough. Our suggestions were always, if these guys really want to learn how to succeed here in the US, they should just up and come live here and work with us for like 3 or 4 months, and really get a feel for it, and listen to the phone calls, and be on these meetings with potential customers. Um, but they never wanted to do that. So that's ultimately, I think that's why they never got to the point or where they really wanted to be as successful here in this country.
So if you were in charge of that, and maybe you already answered this with that, but if you were completely in charge and you had and you could assign OKRs, let's say for example, because that's kind of what crosses corporate membranes, if you will. What would you have assigned if you were if you were CEO of the company?
I mean, if I was the CEO, I definitely would have had more of my decision making leaders have kind of boots on the ground in the US to
Uh-huh.
really learn, and have them sit in and listen to phone calls and listen
Yeah.
into these.
All the stuff you just suggested. Yeah.
Yeah, and by extension, we were in industries that relied heavily on kind of like brand name, and recognition. So we could call people up over the phone and be like, we're the number one website based on, traffic or to the best of our ability, knowing what the other person's traffic was. But when you had like over 1 million unique visitors to your website a month, that's a lot.
Credibility.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but if people really hadn't heard of us, and we would give suggestions about maybe we should attend this trade show, and they would be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We do lots of trade shows in the UK and in Germany and Spain. And then it would kind of just that would be it. We would just hear, oh, that's a great idea, but then there'd be no action. And
Mhm.
I would have had you've invested in buying properties and launching properties in this country, hiring people in the US, and you've spent all this money, but you kind of only went halfway. So now your money's just almost being thrown away. You need to kind of just spend just a little bit more to learn a little bit more.
Right.
And all of this was like kind of like my exposure to um, what has helped me down the line in product management, and how you need to listen to the users, you need to listen to the market, you need to identify what's going on. You need to design and build and come up with features or products that are going to solve problems and not just look cool, or just because they work somewhere else, you don't make the assumption that they're going to work here.
Sure. So where did you go? So where did you go after that company?
After that company, I went and was the first digital hire at a print magazine company that was
What
called The Flyer,
what year was
uh,
that?
2014.
Okay.
So
Wow, that's late for a for a print magazine to finally go digital.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So we were a classifieds ad magazine. So like the mailers, the free mailers you would get in the mail that had a bunch of classified ads in it. Um, and we didn't have any digital properties at the time. There was some stuff that we had sold in the past, but then the company had taken new ownership, had taken over and said, we're going to do this right. And I came on board and helped kind of launch the whole digital aspect of things. And the first thing was building an online classifieds website, like a big kind of flagship digital product for us. And we had a lot of success with that. But that was when I really got into, oh, okay, this is what product management is, because I was working with developers directly, and I started, crafting a backlog of work and going and actually getting to be listened to by the executives and the people within the company and the managers and the salespeople, because it was kind of all here in the US. We all had the same goal in mind. We were all trying to sell and build a product that was good for our customers, regardless of if the customer was spending in print or digital. The sales reps, the managers, everybody wanted the customer just to be happy.
Everybody was
So that,
growing together. And you were like,
yes,
"Oh, I can put words on the website, like the words I choose? Oh, this is amazing."
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there was like the only pushback I did get there internally, other than, your classic, like, don't spend too much money, was from some sales reps that were weary of like, this website is going to take away my business,
Mhm,
because they're like, if the person can go to the website and buy an ad or place an ad and just do it on their own without having to go through
mhm.
a sales rep, then I'm going to lose my commission, or I'm not going to help reach my goals. That was the only kind of resistance I kind of felt when I was there, but that was kind of easily overcame by creating product offerings on the website that um, eh, were able to be sold um, by a sales rep, and not necessarily something that someone could buy themselves. Like a lot of display advertising, it started doing great for these customers on the website, and that had to be sold through a rep. And then we eventually introduced websites, so kind of these templated based websites that the sales reps could sell to customers. So then they were able to dip their toes into the digital waters, and not have to worry about they're losing all their customers who would just come place their ads directly with my website.
Was that, resistance from salespeople? Did they was that explicit, or do you have to kinda suss that out, draw it out of them?
Um, different markets. So we had an office in Tampa and an office in Miami, and the people in Miami, they didn't say it, but
Mhm.
if you ask them, they would directly be like, "Well, I don't want my person to place the ad. Um, like I want them to be with me." And because I could go up to them and be like, have you told your customers about the website? And they're like, "No." And it's like, "Well, why not?" "Well, because I want them to keep placing their ads with me." And this was in the very early stages before they started seeing that, ooh, when they sold ads to their customers on the website, the customers got great results. But up in Tampa, they were a little bit more vocal about like, I would, when we first kind of were launching and everything, and I would finish, um, like a little presentation with any questions, and then they would immediately be like, "Do I still get commission if my customer goes directly to the website and place the ads?" So they were pretty vocal about it in Tampa compared to the Miami office.
Well,
And I don't know if that's just a cultural thing, or if it was because we had certain categories that did better in certain markets, but it was a little bit interesting. This the sales leadership at the time when we launched in Miami was also a little bit stronger, and had been with the company for a longer time than um, some of the people we had in Tampa, especially on the inside sales side. When we launched, we had one woman that was fairly new to the company and didn't really know a lot, and maybe the reps were trying to take advantage of her.
but what was her position?
She was like the director of inside sales, so she
Okay.
was in charge of all the people, pounding the phones and selling a lot of those
Okay.
ads.
Okay. So she was in charge of the boiler room, if you ever saw that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah.
Vin Diesel's
Me too.
breakout dramatic role. I
Yeah.
think he's underappreciated for that role because he's really good. Yeah, it seems like one of the big challenges of PM is the unspoken problems, right? Because you don't know what they are, and it sounds like some of these salespeople were pretty vocal, but a lot of them weren't, and a lot of them you had to kind of ask, "Hey, why aren't you using whatever?" And then they answered, but if you
Mhm.
hadn't asked them the right question, and if they hadn't felt like they could try, and then part of it is maybe a trust thing. They don't want to admit that they what to what they may feel like is going to be perceived as being greedy. Although it's completely understandable.
Oh
Everybody's
yeah.
got their own agendas, just like and it seems like that's such a huge part of PMing is recognizing all the agendas, right?
Mhm.
I've been watching Better Call Saul and before that, Breaking Bad. And I think the overarching theme of both of those shows is people have agendas. People have things they want to do. I mean, the whole I don't know if you saw Breaking Bad, but both of those shows are about guys who are desperately trying to actualize or have some agency, right? And in Breaking Bad, he's a English teacher who we find out later was kind of screwed over by his business partner. Now he's a teacher, where you're sort of having to fit into a system. And I've known teachers, and there's a lot of pressure to sort of behave a certain way or fit some requirements. And so he becomes this drug dealer, and his motivation matters. I guess that would be how I would describe both of those series is motivation matters. And the successful crime lords like the chicken franchise owner in both shows. I forget his name. S Gus Frank is his name in the show. Los Hermanos Los Pollos Hermanos, the Chicken Brothers is the name of his
Mhm.
restaurant. And his kind of overarching thing is he recognizes that everybody has motivations, and he never tries to tell somebody that their motivation is wrong. Now he might ignore their motivation. And Mike, the ex-cop, who's kind of the bridge between those series, is very much that way, right? He understands that everybody's got something that motivates them. It's a man of few words because he realizes that most words most people use or to try to convince somebody that what they want is not what they want, right? How much of communication is about trying to change somebody's mind? And he's all
Mhm.
about your mind is made up. I'm going to try to know what your mind is. I may not want to do well, I may have to kill you, because what you want is going to get me killed. And I'm not going to try to change your mind. And he never does. So any thoughts on that sort of agendas and how important that is?
Yeah. And that, and that has helped me, in almost kind of every product role I have is I want to understand what, what, what kind of the goal of all the different departments that I'm going to need to be working with, what are they striving for? What are they trying
Mhm.
to get? Because, you know, I could be, I could be building out my product roadmap. And I may have all this stuff in, but if I'm not collaborating with our implementation team that is getting ready to in sales, and I know that sales has some very large customers in their pipeline, and I know that the implementation team is going to need integrations into specific other systems outside of our four walls, and my product is going to need to integrate with those systems in order to get these big customers to sign on. Like if I don't know that, and I don't know that that's very important to them, I may just push this way down far on the roadmap or not even have it mentioned. And then, I'm going to damage my relationship working with them. So if I need something from them, if we're getting ready to launch something, and I need implementations help and reaching out to all of our existing customers and educating them on a change, they may not necessarily help me when I need the help. So I want to know what's motivating everybody else, what's important to them. I don't want to barge into a meeting with um, you know, my developers, and we're doing a backlog refinement session, and then all of a sudden out of the blue say, oh yeah, next month we have a huge database change because we're migrating from one system to a next, so we really can't do much work. And I want to be involved. I want to know what the goals of every little department is, so that I can manage my product at the best I can, so it's not chaos.
Yeah, Dr. Phil, who has some crazy therapeutic practices that I don't agree with, but he had a great line, which is knowing what everybody's currency is. Right.
That's a good one.
What do they care about? What's their currency? And a lot of times the trick is, especially for engineers, and my background is engineering, so it took me a long time to learn this, is they're implicit, not explicit. I mean, I would argue 90% of politics is knowing what the unspoken currency is. If you've ever watched House of Cards, well, I'll give you a real world example. When John Travolta was playing Bill Clinton, essentially, in Primary Colors, which is a fantastic movie based on a book. It's probably based on the Clintons. They never say it, but it's pretty obvious. I mean, he's this guy who likes fried chicken and women. I mean, and
Yeah,
so
yeah. Doesn't he have like the white hair too?
yeah,
And
exactly. And he
yeah.
meets, and so Bill Clinton says, "Oh, John, I'd like to meet with you." And he's like, "All right, here it is." He's going to try to persuade me to portray him in a really positive light. He's like, "What could he promise me? I'm John Travolta. I'm the highest paid actor in the world. I have my own jumbo jet.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly wealthy." So Bill Clinton meets with me, says, "John, I hear your people are having some problems in Germany." John Travolta was a Scientologist, and Scientology is considered a cult in Germany, possibly rightly so. There's some evidence for that. Doesn't matter though. The point is, he's like, damn, he figured out the one thing he could help me with that I needed. It was implicit though. It wasn't that there was not a list somewhere in John Travolta's bio saying, "Oh, by the way, I would like help for the Scientologists in Germany." Right.
Hmm.
And so it seems like it's agendas and it's currency, but it's the implicit stuff that's always going to bite you in the butt. And ironically, I suspect the implicit stuff is also maybe what people are embarrassed about. They're like, well, I really want this thing. It's not on the org chart. It's not explicitly promised to me, but I want it. Maybe I want to look smart. Maybe I want to look whatever. And if you can approach that stuff non-judgmentally, I consider PM work almost like business therapists. You can find out what those motivations are.
Yeah, exactly. So I've worked with um, some people in the past that they kind of crave, you could kind of tell they kind of crave that recognition. So just calling them out and be like, oh, this is a great idea. This is great design. When we have our monthly call with everybody in the company and they say, oh, we just put out the latest version. And then if I could just say something like, oh yeah, big thanks to so-and-so, his team helped push that through, or this guy's design was excellent. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been able to crack this, or that sort of stuff. And then that really helps you get those people on your side. And it's easy to do. I mean, it doesn't take any effort for you to do so, but you got to kind of notice all these little things. Like if like if that there's someone that you're working with semi closely, but his role is important to the organization and things that you need to get done. If you know that this guy never responds to emails and is very difficult to get a hold of, like you kind of have to, figure out a way to get what you need from them. So it's, I remember one time being like, every time I walked over to the guy's desk, he wasn't there. He wasn't really responding to my emails. So I found out one time from a guy in his team, because whenever I did walk over to his desk, he was on a phone call with a customer. And I was like, what time does he get to the office? And I stood in the lobby and waited to meet him in the lobby just to talk to him for 5 minutes. This VP, while he was on the elevator. It's like, I need information from this guy. He's not responding to me. I'm just gonna come to him, because that's a lot easier than me reaching out to his boss and saying like he's being uncommunicative, because that's just not gonna help.
So how did that work out? And was it that he didn't want to give you the info, or he just was genuinely busy and that was the only way to reach him?
He was just genuinely busy. He was a very, very busy guy. He was our go-to for almost all of our customers. His responsibility was basically managing all of our customer relationships from the technical side. So we had thousands of customers and very large customers, and he was traveling. So he was just genuinely a busy guy. And I learned, over time, it's, if maybe he's not responding because he's busy, and he's the type of guy that doesn't respond because if he doesn't know the answer, he's not going to just give me BS or anything. So I just figured out, I'm going to go talk to him and do this, instead of going to my boss or going to his boss and saying like, this guy's being uncooperative, because that would probably harm the relationship.
Well, and ironically, he wasn't being uncooperative, right?
True.
He's
Yeah.
doing his job. His job just isn't. That's all very interesting. Any other stories like that about where you had to sort of adapt to the other person's needs?
Yeah. Yeah. I also realized, so when I worked at back when I worked at the Flyer, I had a lot of people on the teams and stuff there that they wanted to make sales. They were salespeople. So sometimes we would have like little bugs or little hiccups and things like that on the website. And I would need to take these bugs and show them to the developers and say, hey, this is an error, this is an issue. But sometimes the sales reps would go into the back end system that they had access to because they needed to, and they would go in and then they would just switch something around and be like, well, something that was supposed to happen automatically, because that's how the feature was built, didn't happen. Then they'd be like, well, I went in there and just manually did it. And then I would be like, well, now the evidence is gone.
Oh yeah, right. You disturbed the crime scene.
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah. And that happened, that really started kind of happening a lot. And I'm like, well, I got to figure out kind of a way to get these people to not
Right.
do this. So, I showed them the importance though of why. I was like, the reason this can keep happening, and I showed them the importance of it, and I got on a whiteboard and I showed literally how our relationship and how everything works with our developers, and how, this goes to this guy and then this has to go all the way across to India and they're ahead of us. So if I report something on a Thursday, they probably won't see it till Monday. And if you need to take your time, because if we don't fix this, then it's just going to keep happening and it's going to mean more work for you. So I just kind of had to teach them this.
Yeah.
and it was tough to kind of break that behavior. Um, and I think at one point I even worked with one of the managers, and if somebody discovered like an error, she would give them like a candy bar. It was just like
Oh, that's great. That's
trying to
simple.
yeah, try to make it fun because she was an inside sales manager. She had a team of like 10 people, and just anything to make it fun for them. They were a great group to work with. They were like a great team that we had in Miami. Probably the best like inside sales team. I was not a sales rep on the team, but the best inside sales team I ever worked with, because they always like worked together. They were like a great team. There's a great team atmosphere. So like they liked little just kind of competitions and stuff like that. So it's like we had to start implementing things like that. I had to educate them on why it was important they didn't do this. And then she kind of came in and helped me, almost like she saw that I was having a struggle. So she kind of came in and helped me there.
Yeah, it seems like one of the challenges with any kind of organization, especially PMing, is making, and this is something that a friend of mine taught me, is understanding, is this person who's blocking me, is that because what is their motivation? Because there's behavior and there's motivation behind the behavior. So if someone, I heard a great quote from a CEO, the CEO of Bumble, former CEO of Bumble. She said, it's important to notice the distinction between nice and kind. Okay. If I have spinach on my teeth, a nice person won't tell me because it's not nice. A kind person will tell me because they're willing to suffer the awkwardness of telling me. And she said she was hiring somebody or interviewing somebody, and the person said, "Oh, you have lipstick on your teeth." And she's like, "That's it. I want that. That's who I want working for me. It's someone who's kind, not nice." So understanding that distinction between, is this behavior caused by someone, is there a motivation behind this, right? Like when you were making suggestions to the website at the first company, and perfect example, they were being nice, they were not being kind. They were like, "Oh yeah, great idea. Pff, we're never going to do that."
Yeah.
Maybe they never even, maybe it was just great idea, not we're never going to do it, but great idea, and then in one ear out the other. Conversely, this person, this VP, was kind. He's doing his job, right? Apparently doing his job so well that everybody wants him to do stuff. And so you rightfully assumed kindness instead of niceness and said, well, or the flip side of that is this person being unkind, or are they just being, rude is the wrong word, or they just appear to be being
Yeah.
abrupt, right? And so you suss that out, and the reality is those are two different situations. One looked nice, and one was being nice, not one was being kind. So that's, any other stories like that about sort of making that distinction, like, oh, this behavior looked one way, but it turned out to be another way, and that was helpful.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've had times where I've thought, um, the same person on the engineering team was just like, not caring about what we were doing. But in reality, they were just so heads down, on trying to build something and plan it out and make it great, that they just, it's not that they didn't have time, but like they were so dedicated and focused and heads down on something, that the stuff I needed help with, while it was important, they the projects and stuff that maybe they were working on, and these were not necessarily like the engineers working directly on these were like kind of like the director of engineering and those people. And I'm like, oh man, he doesn't have time for me. He doesn't have time for this product. Don't you understand? This is like our lifeblood. This is important. Come to find out, he's working on just completely re-architecting something that's going to just be great for us. But he, maybe for some reason he just didn't want to communicate that, just because of the way he is. But I may have assumed that he had no time for me, and he was maybe upset at me or something. But in reality, he was super focused.
Yeah,
He was trying to get stuff done.
he was being egocentric, not selfish.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And egocentric sounds bad, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's just they're focused on their work, you know?
Yeah, and this was before. So we did this training at this specific company I was at, and I forgot, I think it was called like 4 disciplines of execution, but essentially what it is everybody, making everybody in the organization, like, we all have one big goal that we need to go after, and then each department underneath it has their goals that are going to help funnel up to this goal. And then the teams within those departments have to have their goals, and all the goals kind of have to match up to that main one. But one of the great things about doing this is it let everybody kind of show and communicate what our department goal is and what we're trying to accomplish. So then I know that, maybe the reason he is heads down on something is because I know his department's goal is to reduce the number of bugs in their code across all of our products and increase the amount of time that his engineers need to spend fixing
Mhm.
bugs. So he's working on his primary goal right now. He's focused on that. It's not that he doesn't care about, my goal. It's that he's got his goal, and his goal, though, is going to help ultimately my team, and it's going to filter up to the company goal of, increasing our monthly active users.
So is that how you figured out that he was just being egocentric and not selfish?
In this specific example, eventually he told me what was going on.
Oh, okay.
So because I would put stuff on his calendar, and he would have time, but then he wouldn't. He was like, I can't show up to this. He's like, I'm busy, and then
Yeah,
but he wasn't. Sometimes people, it's also the way that they communicate. Not everybody can communicate maybe effectively to other different people. So maybe the way he was
right.
communicating works with other people, but it didn't work with me. And I know I'm the same
Yeah.
way. I'm somebody that I'll follow up a lot, and I'll ask a lot of questions, but some people may take that as like I'm pestering them to get something done. It's like, no, I'm just looking to follow up to see where your status is. It's,
Yeah. Well, I
I
think
just
PMs have to be chameleons and be adaptive to they're kind of like the front end processor, if you're familiar with computer architecture, for
Mhm.
everybody. So when they go to engineering, they know how to communicate and speak in engineering terms. They go to marketing, they know how to speak in their terms and all that sort of stuff so that you're translating essentially for everybody.
Yeah, and another way I've looked at the job and explained it to people before is it's almost like you have to be kind of like the press secretary at the White House, where people are going to ask you questions, but you can't answer them the way you really want to. You have to answer them in kind of like a diplomatic fashion that is going to get the a message across that's not too explicit, but maybe not too vague at the same time. And then you're going to get a bunch of questions thrown at you, and you kind of have to quickly respond back in a way that like is like not going to make this team upset, but
Mhm.
is still going to make this team happy, because you're going to make it think like, oh, they're important, but you also at the same time can't make this person feel like they're not important. So you kind of have to choose your words and 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 think quickly before speaking. One thing I learned, it took me a while, was, it's okay to be silent when when
Mhm.
people ask you questions. It's okay to take the time to think before answering a question. And as a PM, that's kind of helped me. So I'm not just spouting off stuff just to keep the conversation going. I want to say something informed, that's going to help the audience that I'm speaking to.
Yeah, well, there's a great quote, "Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else get your way."
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Yeah. Hey, we're about out of time here, but this was really, really interesting. So thanks for joining me, Gary. This was really
Yeah.
cool. So what company are you at now?
So I'm with a company right now, called MPD Group. So we do data and analytics. So we collect point of sale data, receipt data, and consumer panel data, on various industries around the world, and sell that data and, our analysis and services to, manufacturers, brands, retailers, and financial services companies, globally. So
Okay,
that's where I'm working right now.
cool. Well, thanks for joining me today. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.